Good morning, everyone. We want to welcome everyone here who hasn't been here before, and those, even if you have been, to the John A. Wilson Building, which, of course, is the seat of the District of Columbia government. The Federal Communications Commission actually has not only joined us today, but is helping to host today's briefing because the district government, being here, the district government has played a crucial role in the news that we are announcing here today. News, we believe, with significant implications for cities, police forces, and law-abiding smartphone users across our country. Like other cities across the nation, in recent months, the District of Columbia has seen a significant uptick in thefts and robberies, much of it apparently aimed at users of smartphones and other mobile telecommunications devices. In response to this surge in phone-related crimes, I requested our chief, Kathy Lanier, along with, of course, the Metropolitan Police Department, to use all appropriate means to combat these thefts and robberies. Chief Lanier and the other officers with the MPD have been employing tools to disrupt both the offenders and the fencing operations that make this crime profitable, including hundreds of arrests in recent weeks, a major reward incentive that was established for turning in the leaders of cell phone theft operations, and about 4 weeks ago, a significant bust of a number of businesses, about a dozen businesses that were selling stolen devices. And had you been at the MPD in the aftermath of that bust, you would have had an extraordinary appreciation for the magnitude of these operations and how much was captured in that bust alone. Some of you may recall in my State of the District address just a couple of months ago in February, I then asked Chief Lanier to work with the Federal Communications Commission and the mobile phone industry to take further measures to combat the problem by finding ways to disable phones that have been reported stolen. This will improve and remove the incentive for stealing and reselling smartphones. Chief Lanier then enlisted the assistance of approximately 70 other big city police chiefs in her efforts, and I, in turn, worked with my colleagues in the U.S. Conference of Mayors to bring added attention and effort to this endeavor. So today we're proud to announce that the FCC and the CTIA, the Wireless Association, are giving us a major assist in our efforts to combat smartphone crime. You'll hear further details from today's other speakers, but I want to state how thankful I am that we've been able to reach the agreement that we are announcing today. Every crime is treated as a serious crime in the city, and I'm sure in the other cities that are represented by the chiefs and representatives here today, and none of us will rest until every neighborhood is safe, and that, of course, means addressing crimes like what we've seen in this instance. Whether crime is petty or armed robbery, it certainly will not be tolerated here, and it's not going to be tolerated anywhere else either. I want to thank my fellow mayors across the country as well, none of whom are with us today, but certainly are here in spirit, who I know feel the same way and will be mighty pleased about today's announcement, because it will assist each of their police forces in being able to battle smartphone theft. We have a number of speakers with us here today, but let me begin with our police chief, who has worked assiduously in helping us to address this. Again, I want to thank the U.S. Conference of Mayors for working closely with us on this issue as well. But at this point, please join me in welcoming our chief, who will introduce several of the other chiefs who will speak, and then we'll have other speakers as well. Please join me in welcoming Chief Kathy Lanier.
Thank you. First of all, forgive me, I have a little bit of a cold. It's really an honor for me to be standing here today with four of the best police chiefs in the country behind me, and mentors for me over the past 20 years. Commissioner Kelly, obviously Commissioner Ramsey, Mike Taborn, and Dave Mitchell, all of whom taught me most of what I know in law enforcement in the past 20 years. You know, it's no secret that this growing problem that we faced in Washington, D.C. with the cell phone robberies and the thefts was going on all over the country. That's why we reached out and we enlisted the universities, because the same things were happening on campuses. We reached out to the transit authorities because the same things were happening on transit, trains, buses. And we reached out to our partners in Major City Chiefs, which Chuck Ramsey will talk about, to help bring everybody together to try and solve this problem. You know, we all did what we always do in law enforcement when this problem started to increase. And I have to really commend the NYPD, Commissioner Kelly, and Deputy Commissioner Pulaski from New York. They started raising this issue back in 2009 and really started that charge. But we did what we always do. In law enforcement, we put all of our resources on this. We saw our communities increasingly being victimized and assaulted, people being injured over property. We targeted our offenders. We made lots of arrests. We targeted those who facilitate these crimes through fencing operations. And, you know, we asked for our community's help to be vigilant, to report information to police. But that's just not enough, not in a crime that's as complex as this one is. What we really needed to do was ask for the help of our elected officials, our legislators, our regulators, and then the private sector, to all of us come together and try and put together a solution to stop this problem going forward. And I'm really pleased today to say every one of those folks that we reached out to stepped up to the plate, offered their assistance, and are all here today. And many of which you had to travel here by plane, train, and automobile to get here just so we could stand together and announce what we're going to announce today. I can't thank enough Chairman Janikowski for his efforts. He is a D.C. resident, lives in our communities, and when I reached out to him and spoke with him about the problems that were going on across Washington, D.C. and all the other cities, and he started working with Major City Chiefs, he has been extremely responsive and has accomplished more with his team in the last 3 months than I think that we've seen progress going back to the last 18 months. So I really owe him a tremendous thank you for all of his efforts. So I'm going to announce the speakers going forward. And I'll start off with Commissioner Charles Ramsey, our favorite commissioner, you know, next to me. He's also here representing Major City Chiefs, the 70 or so largest major city police chiefs in the United States.
Thank you. Well, it is good to be back in D.C. But let me talk a little bit about this very serious issue of mobile devices being stolen throughout our country. As Chief Lanier mentioned, Commissioner Kelly and others began working on this several years ago as cities across the country started to see a steady rise in the theft of cell phones, mobile communication devices. Now, when you say theft, oftentimes you think about someone just picking a pocket or someone lays something down and a person takes it. In many instances, in fact, in most instances, particularly in Philadelphia, these devices are being taken point of gun. They're being taken after serious assaults. So this is no small crime. This is something that's very, very serious. And just like we saw a decade ago when we had the Air Jordan gym shoes and the assaults and the robberies taking place and kids actually being shot and killed as a result of people trying to take those particular items, we're starting to see similar things occur now around these mobile devices. So it's very important that we all work together and that we do whatever we can to try to change this dynamic. I'm president of the Major City Chiefs Association, which is made up of the 63 largest cities in the United States and the 7 largest cities in Canada. When this was brought to our attention, in fact, our last meeting in January, we took a vote passing a resolution in support of the efforts spearheaded by Chief Kathy Lanier here in Washington, D.C., to really work with the FCC and with mobile communications providers in order to do what's necessary to make this less attractive and therefore impacting the crime itself. We're in full support. It was passed unanimously, and we stand today in full support of the efforts that are being made. And I want to particularly thank the FCC, Chairman Janikowski, for all his work, and I want to thank everyone who's gathered here today and those who could not make it, because without this combined effort, we would not see any changes in this very serious crime. And I think it's going to make a huge difference in communities across the United States. So thank you very much.
Thank you. You know, we got a couple of folks here that have a few other things on their plate. Chuck Ramsey, in addition to being the commissioner and doing the major city chief stuff, he has a few things going on at home, as does Commissioner Kelly. So I'll introduce Commissioner Ray Kelly to talk from the perspective of New York NYPD.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you for your tremendous leadership on this issue. Over the last 10 years, crime in New York City has gone down 34%. 10 years ago, the theft of cell phones and handheld devices comprised about 8% of our robberies and grand larcenies. Now it's over 40%. And that's because with the increased capacity and the increased cost of these devices, they become much more desirable to thieves and to fences. We saw an explosion of the theft of T-Mobile sidekicks, as they're called, and iPhones. We saw young people, teenagers, robbing each other at high school rush hours. We approach this problem in a two-pronged way. First, tactically. We ran decoy operations against the thieves. We ran sting operations against the fences. We used the device's own technological capability to trace them, to make apprehensions after the fact. And then we engaged in a public education program to give people information as to how they can better safeguard their devices. Now we have a third means of attacking this problem. Now, carriers, with the push of a button, will be able to take highly prized stolen instruments and turn them into worthless pieces of plastic. It's like draining the swamp to fight malaria. What we're doing is drying up the market for stolen cell phones and other type devices. And we think this is going to have a significant impact, as it has in Europe, where they put this solution in place several years ago. So I want to thank the carriers for their cooperation. I want to thank Senator Schumer, who's here. You'll soon hear from him because he championed this issue and he's always been there for us. Again, I want to thank Kathy Lanier for her leadership, and certainly Chairman Janikowski. And as Kathy mentioned, our chief of detectives, Phil Pulaski, has done a terrific job. He's extremely tenacious in this issue. He's been working on it since 2009, and we see the results today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And again, you know, I said we reached out to everybody and asked for help, and everybody really stepped up to the plate. I can't say enough about Senator Schumer here, who has really been on the front lines and trying to push to get this solution in place. So I'll introduce now Senator Charles Schumer.
Well, thank you. I want to thank everyone who's here today, particularly Commissioner Kelly, who brought this issue to my attention a while back, and my friend, former staff member, he worked for me for several years, and great commissioner of the FCC, Jay Janikowski. And I also want to thank the mayor for your hospitality and all our law enforcement for the great job they do. Now, today, iPhones and smartphones are catnip for criminals. They're valuable, they're exposed, they're easy to steal. They are ripe for the picking. At $600 a pop, smartphones and iPhones cost about as much as a flat-screen TV. But needless to say, they're much easier to steal. Not only that, but when a criminal steals a smartphone, they're not only stealing the actual device, costing the victim hundreds and hundreds of dollars, but they're stealing personal information like credit card account information, bank login information, and a host of other sensitive data. While not all crooks use that private information now, you can be sure that many more crooks will in the future if we don't act. You know, technology is great. iPhones and smartphones are great. But they always create problems. Commissioner Kelly can tell you that technology has enabled terrorists to do things that they would never do before. It also gives criminals new kinds of opportunities, whether it's cyber theft, whether it's information theft, or just stealing these devices. And so we always have to stay one step ahead of the criminals and the terrorists when it comes to technology. What we're announcing here today will make a what we're announcing here today will make a stolen cell phone about as worthless as an empty wallet. Because law enforcement's doing their job, but they can't do the kind of job that just makes it such that when you steal the phone, it's worthless. And criminals are smart. Once they know that the phone is worthless, they're not going to steal it. Right now, unfortunately, that's not the case. So by deactivating a cell phone with its unique IMEI number, we can put a really serious dent in this growing crime trend and disable not just the service to a stolen cell phone, which is what you do with the card now, but the device itself. That's what we're doing. Verizon already does it. Now many of our other companies will do the same. I want to thank CTIA. The industry is great, and they really understood the problem and stepped up to the plate. No ands, ifs, or buts. For every attempt we make to beat back a crime, thieves attempt to find a new way to get around the law. So we're looking at another thing they may do. IMEI numbers are the equivalent of a vehicle identification number, a VIN number on a car. VIN numbers help law enforcement track down cars, but the thieves try to change the numbers. When I was in the House of Representatives, I don't know, maybe you even worked on this. I don't know if you were there then. We passed a law that would stop them from being able to change the VIN numbers on the cars. Well, we're going to do the same thing today as well with cell phones and smartphones and iPhones. Because if they steal the phone and then try to change the number, they might be able to get around the system we put in place. So today I'm announcing that I'm introducing legislation that would make it a federal crime for anyone to tamper or alter a cell phone's IMEI number. Right now, it's not an explicit federal crime. You tamper with the number, it's not on the federal law books. It will be. If a phone is stolen, reported to the database, and deactivated, and then someone attempts to alter, change, or tamper with that number, they could face criminal penalties of up to 5 years. It worked for the VIN number, and it'll work for the cell phone ID number. If you steal a cell phone, it'll be a worthless endeavor, and if you try to sell a stolen phone, you'll be caught. Let me explain what first brought my attention to the issue. It was Commissioner Kelly. He is a watchdog against crime in our city. One of the main reasons our city has prospered. We've gone up from 7 million people to close to 8.5 million people in 2 decades, is because the crime rate is way down due to the great men and women of the NYPD led by the commissioner. But he's always on the lookout for new crimes. And he understood just about before anyone else that this was happening. Robberies involving a cell phone have been climbing year after year in New York. In fact, according to the mobile security startup Lockout, New York ranks number 2 in the nation for stolen cell phones, only behind Miami. An amazing 42% of grand larceny crimes are cell phones and iPhones. So, that's a problem. And as I believe the head of our police chiefs mentioned, it also leads to violent crime. We found that in New York. Let me just give you a few instances. There have been numerous cases where the robbery of a cell phone has violent consequences. Just this past week, 4 separate Long Island students were robbed of their cell phones within a 1-hour period in Uniondale, and they were physically assaulted in the course of the thefts. Last summer, a 16-year-old boy was beaten up and robbed inside a Brooklyn train station for his phone. 2 Long Island teenagers last year suffered fractured jaws as an assault. So, Commissioner Kelly pointed this all out to me. I called and wrote the FCC as well as all the people in the industry in August. And as usual, Chairman Janikowski acted quickly and smartly. To their great credit, the carriers got on board, and we're here today in almost record time with a real, significant, and effective solution. So, it's clear that the best way to crack down on the theft of iPhones and smartphones is to make them useless once they're stolen. That's what we're doing here today, and we're going to send a loud and clear message that the market for stolen cell phones is now closed. Thank you.
Okay, I want to introduce now Mr. Gutman-Mccabe, who's cell phone industry representative. Nope.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, Chairman Janikowski, Senator Schumer, and the police chiefs and commissioners who have joined us today. I am Chris Gutman-Mccabe, and I am honored and proud to be here on behalf of CTIA and the wireless industry. Special thanks to the mayor for hosting us here today in your facilities. The initiative announced today to deter thefts of smartphones continues a long string of the wireless industry's efforts to advance public safety and enhance the security and protection of our customers. From our commitment to 911, where close to 70% of calls come over wireless networks, to the development and deployment of wireless Amber Alerts, to the creation of wireless priority service, to a wireless emergency alerts effort that was deployed by many of our carriers just last week, to this effort today, designed to help law enforcement dry up the aftermarket for stolen handsets and protect consumer data. The wireless industry's commitment to our customers has never been stronger. Each of these efforts has something in common. Each began with a voluntary commitment made by the industry, a voluntary effort led by an ecosystem that has been improving the lives of Americans for over 25 years. Today's industry government collaborative effort, developed with Chairman Janikowski and his team, as well as representatives from the wireless industry and the law enforcement community, continues that strong consumer approach by this vibrant ecosystem. Given the wireless industry's strong track record in advancing public safety and consumer issues, we take the smartphone theft issue very seriously and recognize the need to help law enforcement with this uptick in criminal activity. Today, we commit to take concrete, effective steps to deter the thefts of smartphones and protect the personal information that is on them. First, our participating carrier members are working towards implementing databases to prevent reactivation of stolen smartphones. Rendering unusable smartphones reported by customers as stolen is key to deter theft. If the industry can help dry up the demand, we will take the profit motive away from the criminals. Second, for new smartphones entering the marketplace, our participating manufacturer members are working to implement a system in the future that will notify or inform users via their smartphone, upon activation or shortly thereafter, of the capabilities to lock and secure the device from unauthorized access. In addition, participating manufacturer members will include information on how to secure or lock the device in the inbox and or through the online quick start or user guides. Third, participating carrier members will educate consumers about the existence of applications that can lock, locate, and remotely erase data from the smartphones. There are numerous applications available from the Android, BlackBerry, iPhone, and Windows operating systems that allow you to lock the phone, locate it, or wipe it from a remote area. And finally, the wireless industry is in the process of launching a campaign to educate consumers regarding the safe use of smartphones through a range of initiatives, including a public service announcement, unique websites, social media, and more. And we may lean on the leaders that you see behind me to help us get the public service announcements placed in local communities. CTI will provide regular updates to mark the progress the industry is taking in these efforts. The wireless industry prides itself on working with public safety officials and empowering consumers, and this is yet another step in that ongoing effort. We look forward to working with the FCC and law enforcement as partners on this issue going forward. Thank you.
Introduce our neighbor, FCC Chairman Julius Janikowski, and the person whose team has really been, and when I say around the clock, has been around the clock working to pull all these things together. I know that I've been on the phone with the members of his team all through the weekend and through Easter, and I know you've done a lot of work. So please welcome Chairman Julius Janikowski.
Well, thank you, Chief Lanier, for your thank you very much for your very strong leadership on this issue. Senator Schumer, thank you for 30 years of fighting on behalf of law enforcement, always thinking about consumers and victims, and for championing this issue in a direct, personal, and effective way. Commissioner Kelly, thank you very much. I was pleased a few months ago to be in New York with you to announce the acceleration of emergency alerts that will empower local and state and federal law enforcement officials to send mobile alerts to people in times of emergency. New York and D.C. have been leaders here. Commissioner Ramsey, thank you on behalf of both Philadelphia and the National Chiefs Association for your work on this and for your tireless leadership. Thank you to all of the police chiefs who have participated. It is true that my staff has worked on this around the clock. When you have this kind of group calling you up and saying we need to get this done, well, that's a good motivation, and it was the right thing to do. So thank you, team, for your incredible work. Thank you, CTIA, for recognizing the importance of this issue and the need to act. Working together, we've come a long way in a short time on this critically important issue. Now, we're living in the middle of a mobile revolution that continues to accelerate at a dizzying pace. We have these devices, we have smartphones. These are bringing tremendous benefits. The growth is incredible. Within the past year, the percentage of Americans with smartphones has doubled, going from about 25% of subscribers to more than 50%. Commercial tablets didn't exist at the start of 2010. Apple just sold 2 million iPads at the start of over a weekend. These new mobile devices are delivering tremendous benefits. They help us get connected. They help inform. They often save lives. They give us access to 911 from wherever we are. They're helping grow our economy and create jobs. The apps economy, which wouldn't exist without these devices, is a new industry made possible by mobile innovation. It's already created 500,000 new jobs in just the last few years. But the rapid adoption of smartphones and tablets is also creating very real safety concerns. The numbers are alarming. In D.C., New York, and other major cities, roughly 40% of all robberies now involve cell phone. You heard from Commissioner Kelly, that's up from 8%. It's not, obviously it's not just a game. This endangers the physical safety of people all over the country, as well as the safety of personal information that's on the stolen devices. In D.C., you heard that the percentage of robberies involving cell phones is up 54% since 2007. Now, over the last several months, we've heard from Senator Schumer, who called this vital issue to our attention and made it a priority. We've heard from Chief Lanier and Commissioner Kelly, the major police chiefs association led by Commissioner Ramsey, serving 76 million people, issued a resolution calling for action. They all said, this is a real problem. We need a solution. I agreed. And we rolled up our sleeves looking for practical solutions. We formed a task force with some of our agency's most talented people. We spoke with carriers, manufacturers, operating system and software companies. In February at the GSMA World Congress, a major annual global wireless gathering, I raised the issue publicly as a serious consumer issue, said the FCC was taking this seriously and that we needed action. I met while I was there with the GSMA executive responsible for the GSMA database operating in a number of countries, including the UK. I learned that a database system was both working in countries like the UK and doable here in the United States. From that point on, it was clear that we wouldn't take no for an answer. Together with all the stakeholders involved here, we sped up our work. I'm very pleased that the industry has responded and responded in a serious way. And so today we're announcing the Protect Initiative, a series of practical, meaningful solutions to combat cell phone theft. These are steps that will reduce the value of stolen smartphones and tablets and better protect consumer data on mobile devices. We're sending a message to consumers, we got your back, and a message to criminals that we're cracking down on the phone and tablet resale market, making smartphone a crime that doesn't pay. Don't waste your time. The initiative we're announcing today consists of 3 key pieces. 1, creating a database to prevent use of stolen smartphones and tablets. This database will enable carriers to disable stolen smartphones and tablets, dramatically reducing their value on the black market. Number 2, putting in place automatic prompts on smartphones and tablets for consumers to set up passwords and take steps to secure their devices. And 3, launching a public education campaign urging consumers to use applications that increase security and reduce the value of stolen devices, including apps that enable consumers to locate, lock, and wipe missing smartphones and tablets. This campaign begins with an FCC tip sheet that we're issuing today, and we'll work with members of Congress, with police chiefs, with the industry to spread the word. I commend CTIA and the wireless industry for stepping up, including AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, Verizon, and Nextech Wireless for their commitment to these steps. I acknowledge and thank the equipment manufacturers who were involved, supported, made commitments in connection with this: Apple, Motorola, Qualcomm, HTC, Microsoft, Nokia, RIM, operating system developers, all companies who stepped up and said we need and we will be part of the solution. In the last couple of years, the U.S. has regained global leadership in mobile innovation. We are leading the world in the rollout of 4G mobile. With the steps we're announcing today, the U.S. will also become a world leader in addressing the growing problem of mobile device theft. Now, of course, technology will continue to change, creating new opportunities for people, for our economies, and new challenges. Under today's announcement, the wireless industry will submit quarterly updates to the FCC on progress on these initiatives. If the deadlines aren't met, the Commission will take action. Also, for the first time, we're announcing today that the FCC will establish regular quarterly meetings with police chiefs on this initiative and on any new issues that may arise in this area so that we can move quickly in helping our law enforcement, our first responders do their job. Finally, the database system that we're announcing today will become more effective as more countries join. We have called on all countries to adopt this database and the other solutions we're announcing today. I'm making it a priority of the FCC's International Bureau to work with other countries to advance this initiative. Again, thank you to everyone here for your leadership and support. Senator Schumer, I look forward to working with you and all stakeholders on your legislation. Thank you again to the companies that have stepped up and to the police chiefs who have the hard jobs on the front lines every day.
Okay, I'm going to introduce now Mike Taborn, who's the chief of the Metro Transit Police. You know, come on up, Mike. You know, we used to joke with the Metro Transit Police all the time and say, you know, you got this tough job. Your jurisdiction's like 30 feet wide and 100 miles long, but in all honesty, his job's a lot harder than ours because his geography moves. And when he's got to fight crime on the trains and on the buses, it's moving geography, and that's very difficult to do, and he has really done a fantastic job. I can always tell when he's doing a really, really good job because the crime comes back on me. So we appreciate your efforts, and I thought it'd be important for you to talk about just how significant this has been on transit around the country.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Senator Schumer, FCC Chairman Janikowski, the Honorable Mr. Mayor Benson Gray, Chief Lanier, the law enforcement leaders assembled behind me. Thank you for affording me the opportunity to be here today to talk about this issue. This is an issue that the Metro Transit Police Department here in the National Capital Region and other transit agencies across the United States deal with every day. In the past few years, as we all know, technology has advanced to the point where people can have a device as powerful as a computer in the palm of their hand. These devices, iPhones, Androids, to name two, have become especially attractive targets for thieves due to the compact size and high resale value. We had a case not too long ago where we cooperatively worked with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office involving a theft ring that was working on the Metro Rail system. Through good detective work and interagency cooperation, we traced these stolen phones. They were ending up being sold at two vendors at nearby shopping malls. Many victims in the transit environment can be absorbed in their device and may not be aware of their surroundings until their device is snatched out of their hands. It is a crime of opportunity, and the devices are particularly attractive to criminals. While we have had some success at reducing snatch thefts, this type of crime remains a concern for the Metro Transit Police Department. Last year, we had 326 incidents involving snatches of electronic devices, down from 477 incidents the previous year. Today, we have officers assigned to our crime suppression team. These teams are out in the system, working in plain clothes, using decoy devices to identify and stop thieves. When a thief strikes, other officers move in to make an immediate arrest. Together with public outreach effort and partnerships with our regional law enforcement agencies, we are making progress. But this type of crime will remain a problem as long as there's a market for these stolen devices. That's why I'm grateful for the leadership of the FCC, the wireless carriers, Chief Lanier, and others who have advocated for a technology solution to this problem. Any system that can prevent a thief from reselling a high-priced electronic device would be a very welcome tool in making our system safer for our customers and employees. And thank you all again.
When I was talking to chiefs around the country about seeing just how big a problem this was, I spoke with some transit chiefs all out in the Midwest and all over the United States, and was struck by an email I got by a transit chief in the Midwest who sent me an email about 3 in the morning saying, if we can accomplish this, it would mean a lot, because our only homicide victim last year was a young lady who was shoved down an escalator in an attempt to steal her phone, and she was killed. And so he was one of the first emails I sent out when I got word that this was going forward today. And lastly, but certainly not least, a chief who is responsible for, among many other things, keeping our children safe while they're in the university campuses and going to school and trying to get an education, who has been a police chief in this area for a long, long time, now chief over at Maryland University, Dave Mitchell.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you very much, Senator, Mr. Chairman, and my colleagues here today, and certainly all of our appointed industry officials and others. This is a partnership that's paying big dividends. And as we've heard this morning, that this wonderful technology brings with it the opportunity to commit crimes. On my campus alone, we've had in the last 13 months 56 incidents where we've had a theft of a cell phone. The last robbery committed on our campus was over a cell phone. Fortunately, we closed that with an arrest. Now, if you survey students, and by the way, I have 35,000 of them, most of them are under the age of 21, and you ask them, what is the one thing you can't live without? You can only imagine. It's not Budweiser or any of the other makers out there. It's their cell phone. And we love that. Why do we love that? Because we rely on that technology to alert our students at times of risk, whether or not it's a tornado, whether or not it's an earthquake or a hurricane, and I've had all 3 of those in the past 14 months. We've also used that, and our students have used it to develop applications. We have an app now where you can hit the app, and everything that your cell phone sees and everything that it hears directly appears on our dispatcher's screen. You can imagine how wonderful that is. We're using the same technology to develop virtual escorts, so students can use that and hit an app, and they can walk throughout campus at night, and our officers who are monitoring our video screens and so forth can make sure that they get to their destination safely. Of course, this is not without risk. The risk is, as we've heard, that oftentimes these phones are taken either by force or they're some type of felony theft. I applaud the industry, I applaud the FCC and others, and I applaud my colleagues for bringing attention not only to the issue, but bringing a solution to the table, one that's going to continue to pay big dividends. Thank you.
So one last housekeeping issue before we go to questions. About 2 weeks ago, I did an interview on the Today Show, and I was asked by the reporter, what is it you have to say, Chief, to the cell carriers who haven't implemented a solution? And I said, shame on you. So today I think I have to take that back. Give credit where credit's due. Today I say to the cell carriers, thank you, congratulations, and thanks for your support in helping keep our community safe.
I want to thank all of our speakers, all of the law enforcement officials, Senator Schumer, Chairman Janikowski, and others who've joined us here today. I do want to make mention, I see a vice president from Verizon who has joined us today, and they were mentioned several times, so I cannot let the opportunity go by without acknowledging the presence of Joe Askew, who's been a good friend of the city and a partner in helping to address these kind of issues. Joe, thank you for being here today. And with that having been said, let's open it up to the media for any questions you may have, and you can direct them, obviously, to anybody who's here. Let's start with you, Mark Seagraves.
Can somebody explain to us exactly the nuts and bolts of how this will work? Is it the provider who kills the phone? Is it the manufacturer? Does every provider participate in this? And what's the downtime between the time when I call in and report my phone stolen and when the phone is actually killed? Good, and I would argue difficult questions, I guess. The report will come from the consumer to their carrier, and that will begin a process by which the carrier will identify and load a unique identifying number. It differs in the United States. We have, I guess, the equivalent of gas and diesel. We have CDMA and GSM, and there are two different types of networks that don't really interface. But it will be placed into sort of a database, and that database will then be, every time someone brings a phone with them to a carrier to try to initiate service, that device or that database will be checked, will be looked at to see if the phone is on that database. If it is, it will be denied service. And there will be a process. When we approach this, we tried to come up with almost bifurcate the issue and try to come up with what can we do as quickly as possible and what is going to take a little bit of time to develop. So in the short term, our carriers in the very near future will have individual databases. The idea ultimately will be to link those databases and then ultimately to link those databases internationally with the databases that Chairman Janikowski has talked about. And then, from that point in time, it'll be, it'll be a matter of, once the processes are in place at the point of sale, to check those databases. It'll happen instantly. I mean, a number will be put into the system. It'll be in the system, and the people at the point of sale will check that database. So all providers, which providers? So right now we have 5 carriers. This is similar to the effort that we did both on our wireless emergency alerts, where because of the quick deadlines and the rapid turnaround, I think you heard mention of the fact that this has happened basically over the last week and a half. So it's our 4 largest carriers, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, and Sprint, as well as Nextech Wireless. We worked with 19 of our companies to put this effort together. Those 19 companies have embraced this solution, and we will, as this system gets up and running, the benefits of the initial scale and scope will flow to some of our smaller carriers. But out of the gate, that is sort of north of 90% of all consumers in the United States will be supported by this.
Bruce Leshan from Channel 9. Just 2 weeks ago, CTIA was saying that there were these huge technological hurdles, that you had to wait for Mexico and for Asia and so forth. Did you take too long to act on this? Could you have acted sooner? And might people have been protected from being assaulted if you had acted sooner?
Well, I think, and you heard the discussions today, the pace with which we moved to get this and to get what we think are very solid and very reasonable steps and very sort of logical and go beyond what has happened and what is being done around the world has been, nothing short of spectacular. I've been at CTI for 12 years. We moved extremely quickly. I mean, if you think about when this was sort of brought to us as a potential issue and how quickly we're here surrounded by the leaders in the public safety community. I do think, and that's why I said we sort of bifurcated the effort, I do think that there are issues involving the ability to transport these phones outside the United States. And the sooner we can get other countries to adopt similar initiatives, the better operating the databases will be.
Why are the U.S. carriers following the U.K. carriers who apparently have been doing this for some period of time?
Well, the reality is, and this is somewhat unique to the United States, handsets have been subsidized in the United States forever, and so the instances of theft weren't matched in the United States until recently that they were in the EU. In the EU and in parts of Asia and South Asia, people pay $1,000 or $1,200 for their handsets, and there was a more robust market for the stolen handsets. As this began to happen, and we saw an uptick here, we recognized that there was a need to get together with Chairman Janikowski and his team, with public safety, and come up with not just a database initiative, but sort of a host or a whole realm of solutions that will help render these devices inoperable, dry up the aftermarket for it. And it involves, locking a phone. It involves wiping the phone of the personal data. It involves a smartphone campaign. It involves a public service announcement. And it's a multitude of issues. It involves websites and a campaign to tell consumers, pay attention to your surroundings, understand that you should have your phone, a password on your phone, that is equally effective in rendering it obsolete. And then the senator talked about something else, which is sort of, and I think several of the chiefs and commissioners talked about this as well, trying to stay ahead of the criminals. So part of the effort that the senator has announced will be making it a criminal penalty to go and change those unique identifiers so that people can't go onto the internet and find a way to go and wipe that unique identifier and render this not as effective.
Chris, Paul Kirby with TRW. So the databases, is it technology not available now? Because there's a timeline for GSM and a longer timeline for LTE. Why is that necessary? And then secondary, the chairman kept on saying tablets. Of course, if you had a tablet that does have an internet connection, this does not apply to that. You're not going to be remotely able to do anything with that. But the chairman kept on saying tablets. Can you address that?
Yes. So to your first question, the reality is LTE, and I think the chairman referenced this, we are leading the world in LTE deployment right now. And so we're the ecosystem. We're the test case for how to do this in an LTE environment. And so that's why we tried to bifurcate the issue. What can we do ultimately with regard to LTE, and how will we link that? And then what can we do in the short term with the technologies that exist now, the CDMA and the GSM? And then initially the focus is on the devices that our entire ecosystem supports, sort of the smartphones, the devices that you heard many of the chiefs and commissioners talk about that are snatched and grabbed and taken away, the smaller smartphone devices. That's where the focus has been on this effort. The ones that have a connection to our networks where we can then go out and dry up that aftermarket. So that's where the focus has been.
Can you talk about the cost to the industry of all this?
The reality is a lot of times when we talk to our CEOs, there's a significant sort of good corporate citizen effort involved. And, it obviously won't be without cost. But we don't talk about the cost in this context, just like we don't talk about the cost in the context of the emergency alert system that was launched last week. And we don't talk about it in the context of the alerts that we send out to consumers. This is about safety and security. This is about giving consumers tools. And it's about helping the public safety officials behind us, giving them the tools to help dry this up. I have to say, I said at the beginning I was honored and proud. I'm very proud to be up here because I think this is something that shows I'd put our record against any industry in the United States, whether it's the aggressive rollout of 911 or wireless Amber Alerts or the emergency alerts that we talked about, or the alerts to consumers when their bills are getting close to a limit. So, we look at this as a voluntary effort. This is voluntary in nature. We expect to hit the deadlines, and we believe that the ecosystem will broaden, just like it has in the emergency alert space, just like it has in the consumer alert space.
What happens if the deadlines aren't hit?
I'm a glass half full person. The deadlines, we're going to hit the deadlines, and we're going to give quarterly updates on it. I think people will be excited to see the range of efforts on behalf of our carriers and manufacturers, and it obviously goes well beyond what we're able to reduce to one page here. So.
Skeptics would say it's only voluntary.
Hold on. We have a number of people who want to ask questions. We're going to ask you to ask one and not to repeat until we've gotten through those who haven't had a chance to ask the questions.
And I'm perfectly comfortable if you want to direct questions to anyone else.
The police chiefs mentioned that there are these complex fencing operations. Can you just briefly talk about the steps they were taking from the moment the smartphone snatched out of my hand, the moment to the point where it gets to the resale market? What were they doing?
Well, I'm not going to give you a how-to guide, but I will say that we've seen In Washington, I know Commissioner Kelly has seen in New York as well, and I believe in the other major cities, a variety of different ways. There are some that are being fenced almost immediately on the internet, Craigslist, things like that. Some that are being fenced in shopping malls or parking lots of shopping malls almost immediately after the theft, and some that are being resold in other businesses who are selling them out on the street, which is what we saw a large issue with here in Washington. We actually had 13 businesses of all kinds, everything from food businesses to variety stores to jewelry stores that were knowingly reselling phones that were stolen and taken in robberies. So there's a variety of ways that they're being fenced, and we really have to stay on the fencers to make sure that they don't continue to facilitate it.
I'll take two more questions. Bill, and then I saw your hand right back there.
I had a question for Chief Lanier. Chief Lanier, over the months you've been talking about how there was a system in place in Europe. Can you elaborate on where in Europe such a system is? You know it's in the UK. But Senator Schumer has mentioned the fact that Miami leads the nation in terms of cell phones. To what extent is there a system in Latin America, or are we going to be putting in place a system in the United States, and then syndicates just be shipping the phones, the stolen phones, to Latin America?
Well, I'll talk about it a little bit. I don't know if the FCC chairman wants to jump in, but our issue and the issue that I've seen, and I've spoken with major city chiefs, through the organization and the transit police chiefs and all the chiefs around the country. And even with our fencing operations that we took down, it is extremely rare where we've seen the stolen phones being remarketed outside of the United States. Our biggest problem, 90 to 95% of the resale of stolen phones, is on the local market right here in our own community. So this solution that is being put in place will have a tremendous impact on the problem that we face on the street at the local law enforcement level. And I know that the database does exist in other places other than the UK, I believe Australia, and the industry has committed to work with the FCC to after the first step of activating the database here in the United States with U.S. North American carriers, to also expand that globally over the next 18 months or so. So I think the ball is rolling in the right direction, and it'll have a tremendous impact.
Can I just add one thing to that, Mayor? As often happens with technology, the offensive capabilities can outstrip the defensive ones. It's easier to steal a cell phone and resell it than it is to build a complex database that can very quickly turn off the phone anywhere in the world. What we're all doing today, and the wireless industry should be commended for this, is saying, you know what, we are going to steer our technology efforts to catch up to, and then do everything we can to get ahead of the bad guys. So that's why we've set up a quarterly process. That's why the focus on LTE, which is coming. And that's why we're starting now engaging with the international community to get ahead of the potential international issue and make sure that over time, if a phone is stolen, a button can be pressed and can be rendered useless anywhere in the world.
All right, you have the last word.
Great. Mr. Gutman-Mccabe, one quick thing. I know you said that the industry reacted very swiftly to do this.
Sure.
What specific concerns had to be allayed or addressed among your carriers to get everybody on board? There have been some suggestions that perhaps it was slow, and I'm just kind of curious what specific concerns there were.
Sure. Well, again, and I think we tend to, the chairman said this, and I was very grateful to hear him say this, but the United States has really recaptured the technological lead here. But I think people have to understand that we're talking about devices and operating systems that are being sold throughout the world. We're talking about, there's been a lot of focus on the carriers, and there should be. They did really yeoman's work pushing this. But we also had most of the major operating systems and handset manufacturers, all of whom serve a worldwide community. So in this instance, we were trying to move the ecosystem in the United States while simultaneously moving the ecosystem around the world to do this. And so, and then the issue is, how do you set time frames that are accelerated and really move the ball forward, but also can be attained with a focus on this issue. And so for us, it was a matter of how do we set deadlines that help the folks, the leaders behind us, but that can be attained and can be done by companies that are serving a multitude of countries.
Thank you all very much.